I think you're up over here.
I got it. There we go. All right. Welcome, everyone. We have a smaller group today, but not bad. I'm going to pass it directly over to our master of ceremonies for us to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everyone, if you would all please stand and repeat quietly after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated, and those of you on Zoom, please stand up. No, I'm joking. Please remain seated. Madam President, I'm going to turn the podium back over to you.
Sorry, I'm getting back into the hang of things here. April's only gone a week, but of course, I'm acting like I was gone a month. So I'm going to introduce our Toastmaster tonight, who is Christina Stepper.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to August 16th Toastmasters meeting. We have two changes. The timer this evening will be Mary. The counter this evening will be Eric. Thank you for taking on those tests. I'd like to remind everyone to please mute your phones before we get started. Do we have a joke of the day? No jokes. Then we will move right along. Theme today is bucket list. I think if I worked for the fire department, I'd know exactly what was going to be on my bucket list. But I don't. I'm interested to hear what others think. At this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to our general evaluator, Vicki Chatterton.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. As general evaluator, I will be evaluating the meeting as a whole, but I am fortunate enough to have a wonderful team to help me. And the first person on that team is our speech evaluator, who is Steve Schwinn. Steve, will you tell us what you'll be doing, please?
Thank you so much. Tonight I'll be evaluating Lloyd's second speech on a topic of his choice. And the role or the goal of the evaluation is to identify that he has modified his speech from his original effort last week. I'll pay close attention and report on his performance at the end of the meeting. And I'll return it back to generally validated. Interesting.
Thank you very much. And jumping in as our timer this evening is Mary. Mary, will you tell us what you will be doing, please?
Yeah, Mary.
Yes, I will tell you what I've been doing this evening. I will be timing everyone with a speaking role. Lloyd is our speaker tonight. His speech is 5 to 7 minutes. At 5 minutes, I'll hold up the green folder. 6 minutes, we'll see the yellow folder, and 7 minutes, red folder. Our second set of speakers tonight will be our table topics, 1 to 2 minutes apiece. At 1 minute, green folder. 1.5 minutes, yellow folder. 2 minutes, red. Speech evaluation will be given by Steve Schwinn. This is 2 to 3 minutes. And at 2 minutes, we'll see the green folder, 2.5 yellow, and at 3 minutes, the red folder. And you know the drill. When you see a red folder, it's time to wrap it up. I'll report my timings to you at the end of the meeting. Vicki.
Thank you very much. And I do see that Fabiola has joined us. So I'm just checking with her to see if she is ready to take on the role of counter this evening. Are you prepared to do that?
Oh, my goodness. I did not know that.
If not, that's fine. We had somebody step in because we weren't sure. So it's up to you if you want to do that role or not.
Okay, if I can get it past this time, but I would more than happy accept a position or responsibility next week.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce our grammarian and counter, Eric. Eric, will you tell us what you'll be doing this evening?
And I'll counter.
Okay.
Both hats.
Fabiola, if you will be on Zoom every time, I will send you a format for accounting, and then you can be able to do that. I am grammarian, and as grammarian, I will have a word of the day. I can look here. I will have a word of the day, and I will also be looking for egregious grammatical errors, or actually nice pieces of speech that people weave into their into their speaking. I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to go to Zoom school here. The word of the day is holus bolus. Has anybody heard of holus bolus? Just me. I'm going to stick it right here, but Selena had a value, but holus bolus means all at once. And I don't even know if that's more helpful. How are you going to leave that in to the meeting? Holus bolus. Regrettably, the company shuttered its factory, holus bolus, without providing notice to the men and women working there. Holus bolus. If you can use that, I will mark it and give reports at the end of the meeting. I'll also be doing accounting. As you know, one of the main reasons I joined Toastmasters was to get rid of my ahs, ers, ums, and stumbling pieces of speech whenever I'm talking. So I will be keeping track of all of those filler words, or you knows, or starting sentences with and so. That seems to be more of our issue. I will keep track on a handy little sheet, and I will give my report when called upon. Back to you, Ms. General Evaluator.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to return control over to our meeting, back to our Toastmaster, Christina.
Thank you.
I wonder that.
You're the sergeant at arms, so we can't call the sergeant at arms. You have to be quiet. But you are the same, said one. This evening we have one speech. Lloyd will be giving his second speech in the evaluation and feedback project for level 1 of the innovative planning path. As Steve mentioned, Lloyd will focus on suggestions he received last week from evaluations. Lloyd will give his speech, holus bolus, no pauses or questions and answers. Please join me in welcoming Lloyd for his speech, Tinfoil Beanies.
Thank you, Christina. Oops, let me go through this. There we go. Last week, when I was talking about the ins and outs of the COVID vaccines, Steve suggested that in his critique that I extended by talking about some of the rumors, myths, and whatnot that have attached to the virus. I was going to do that anyway, but ran out of time last week. But it was inspired by an experience I had. The day that I got my second COVID vaccine, when I drove back home, I parked my car out on the sidewalk instead of in the garage because I was going to go somewhere. One of my neighbors strolled by and he noticed the writing on the windshield. Those of you who had your vaccine over at Town Toyota know that they wrote I think the date and whether it was your first and second shot, and then a time, military notation, the time you could leave. And he looked at that and said, "What is that?" I told him, and he physically recoiled. He stepped back from me and said, "You got that shot?" And I said, "Well, yeah." "Don't you know," he said, "that has never been tested on humans anywhere?" And I said, "Well, no. In fact, I know that it has been because about 70,000 people were in the test cohort for the Pfizer vaccine that I got, including a group that was recruited over at Confluence Health." "No," he said, "they're just making that crap up." And he went on for a while about how dangerous the vaccine was. And I told him, "Well, Gary, you can live in the reality you want to live in, but I'm going to live in the reality that's got medical science. And in the meantime, I'd prefer you to stay about 6 feet away from me, even wandering off." Anyway, that's by no means the weirdest thought about the COVID vaccine. So I did a little looking for myths and legends and folklore and whatnot, came up with about 35 of them that are in circulation. Well, that's too many. So I whittled it down to 3 that I really like a lot. And I think you will too, for different reasons. The first one is that tens of thousands of people have died of severe allergic reactions or long-term effects after getting the COVID vaccinations. But there's always a they in these things, they are keeping it secret by labeling those COVID deaths. And the reason the doctors and hospitals cooperate is that they get extra money from the federal government by labeling any death a COVID death. Now, some of you look skeptical, but that's because you've got common sense. It turns out that falsification of a death certificate is a felony in all 50 states. And I really doubt any number of doctors would be eager to lose their licenses and potentially go to jail for doing that. The extra money has a kernel of truth behind it. It turns out that the Social Security Administration pays hospitals a little bit of extra money when they treat COVID patients, but that's to defray the extra labor costs of treating them. It's very labor intensive to deal with a COVID patient. Also, there have been about 400 million shots given out in the US in the last 6 months. And you need to understand that the medical people define a long-term effect as one that occurs within the first 2 or 3 months. Anything beyond that is not going to happen, period. A short-term effect is 15 to 30 minutes, which accounts for that 15 minutes they made you hang around after you got your shot. Well, the only serious short-term effect is something called anaphylactic shock, and that's what people with like severe peanut allergies or bee sting allergies get, and it can kill you, but it'll happen within just a very few minutes. And the incidence of that in society has not gone up at all since the COVID vaccine has been given. The side effects, there are side effects that are very, very common. You know, soreness at the injection site, feeling of fatigue, that kind of thing. Those are actually not negative side effects. The vaccine isn't doing that to you. Your body, your immune system is reacting to it, which it should. If you had that range of side effects, that was actually good news, not bad news, although you probably didn't think so at the time. Finally, there's something called VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Effects Reporting System that the federal government runs. They troll news media, hospital reports, ER rooms, whatever, for accounts of adverse reactions to any vaccines. They do statistical analysis and they release reports on that. There have been no reports that show any side effects, long-term or short-term, that you could associate with the COVID vaccine. So that one's just factually untrue. But it had just enough truth to it that it sounds kind of truthy, as George Bush's people used to say, as opposed to truthful. The second one I like a lot, this one is really great. The COVID vaccine makes you magnetic, literally magnetic, like stick to your refrigerator magnetic, you know. This one is pretty easy to deal with. It turns out the whole thing was started by a doctor in Ohio who was testifying before the Ohio legislature to argue against mask mandates. And she just tossed out the idea that it made everybody magnetic. Well, first of all, there are no metals in the vaccine, so it's not likely that it would be magnetic. But in addition to that, have you seen anybody walking around with like paper clips stuck to their shoulders or something? I mean, it doesn't happen in the real world. Nobody has seen it because it can't happen. That sounds kind of crazy, but it's not as crazy as my favorite that I saved for last. The COVID vaccine contains tracking microchips that Bill Gates has had put in there to follow us all around. Now, first of all, every one of us is already carrying a tracking device with us. It's called a cell phone. So we really don't need the vaccine to do it. But that one has an origin, believe it or not. About 3 years ago, Gates was at some kind of a conference and he discussed the idea of digital vaccination certificates so people could carry something around easily, show they've been vaccinated. But he pointed out a lot of people probably wouldn't want to do it. Then a little while later, he was at a different conference where he suggested that everyone's medical records could be put on a chip, somewhat like they chip dogs and cats for ID. And that way, a scanner, they could get your medical records if you ended up in the ER somewhere and couldn't talk to the doctors. But he said probably people wouldn't want to do it. And then finally, and the most sinister thing, his foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, donated $1.75 billion to pandemic research and vaccine development, which obviously proves he's getting something out of it. He wouldn't give that kind of money away. There isn't any microchip in the vaccines. Don't worry about it. Here's why. Even if Gates wanted to do it, the vaccine needle diameter, the hole the vaccine comes through, is 2/100ths of an inch. The smallest functional microchip made anywhere on Earth is 6/100ths of an inch. This is the literal equivalent of trying to put a pool ball through a garden hose. Okay, it can't be done even if the fabulously wealthy Mr. Gates wanted to. The point is, none of these myths and legends and weird stories and whatnot that we hear are true, but I like those three a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. I'll rest easier tonight. Knowing I don't have a microchip shoved through my arm. Can we get a minute? And our timer is back with us. Would you like to? Selena, Mary's gonna continue. Are you okay with that? Okay, we're gonna stick with Mary tonight. Could we have a minute for comments?
Push. Yeah, there you go. Okay, now.
One minute has passed.
Thank you, Mary. I'd like to invite everyone to please wrap up your comments. The next segment. Yes. Such obedient and respectful folks, keeping us on time. The next portion of our meeting is tons of fun. It is table topics. I would like to introduce tonight's table topics master, Pat Whitfield.
I hope everybody's going to find this to be a lot of fun. Given that our theme tonight is bucket lists, the questions that I have are all related to what your bucket list might be in a variety of categories. We'll see. So my first question is for Barbara. And the question is, who is your favorite superhero and why would you want to meet this person as part of your bucket list?
Who is my favorite superhero and why would it be on my bucket list? Of two. The first person that comes to mind is Courage the Cowardly Dog. Anybody remember that? He's one of my favorite characters because, of course, he was called Courage the Cowardly Dog, but he was far from cowardly. He rescued his owners several times in almost every episode of the cartoon that I watched on a regular basis with my children. He was very courageous, and even though he, like I said, even though he was scared and would shake and would act afraid, he still was able to get through the situation and save the day every single time. Why he's on my bucket list? Because I think sometimes we feel that we don't have it in us to save the day or to follow through, but we do. It's there. It's in all of us. We can all be that person to save the day and make even just one person's life just a little bit better. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you so much. Very interesting. My next question is for Rob Tidd. If a movie was made of your life, what genre would it be and who would play you?
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. If a movie was made about my life, it would be all the things not to do in your lives. I did a lot of things that got me in trouble and probably could have gotten me killed if they had gone sideways. I remember when I was 19 years old, I worked on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. It was the Wild West working up there in Alaska. And I worked on a crew with welders and we would connect sections of pipe together. There was wildlife, there was bootleg liquor, 500 gentlemen in this, and I use that term loosely, in this camp, and 50 women. I kept my distance. I remember often that the bears would come walking down the right of way and they would try and get our lunches out of the welding sleds. One day, I got on one end of the sled while the bear was trying to open the sled. And he did. He got in and got the lunches, and I went around that sled with a cupcake in my right hand, and I reached around and touched that bear on the back of the head. That bear reared back, and I thought, I'm done. And then he went right back for the cupcake. So that's just one example of the things that you don't want to do. And that would be one of the highlights of the movie. And who would play me? That is a difficult question. I think that the person who would play me would be someone not very appreciated by most people. I'm struggling with his name. I don't know who would play me, but it would be a bad guy, a really, really bad guy with poor judgment, doing all these things in his life, not all holus bolus, but over the course of my lifetime, it just would be a very, very bad person. That's the best I can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
Where in the world? I have had a fascination for a long time with New Zealand. I'm not exactly sure why. Beautiful pictures, wide open country, lots of beachfront, sheep roaming here and there. We don't have sheep roaming here and there. I just find that quite appealing. I'm not sure I would enjoy the trip to get there so very much. Flying over oceans isn't terribly exciting. But perhaps it would be at night. We could just sleep during that portion of it. Another good thing about New Zealand, I believe they speak English. That would be a real benefit. We did go to Mexico once and did all right down there. One of the most interesting things was that it was Thanksgiving time, and there were these massive inflated snowmen on tops of really crummy sheds that people lived in. Apparently they got them at Costco. I just found that interesting. I don't think we would see that in New Zealand somehow. Yes, New Zealand. If anyone wants to go along, let me know. We'll plan a trip. We could have a meeting there. Visit Toastmasters clubs.
Thank you very much. Vicki, if you could trade lives with anyone for a day, who would it be and why?
Thank you, Mrs. Table Topics Master. Who would I change places with for a day and why? There's so many people that come to mind, but I think I would like to change places with, I would have liked to have changed places with my grandmother in time, just to see what her life was like at my age, and to really have an experience to understand what it was that she went through, because she was born in the early 1900s, and so it would have been probably in the 1920s, you know, when she was a young person, and to find out what her life was like during that period of time would have been interesting, because I know that they were in an agricultural area, and she had a lot of responsibilities, and she was one of the oldest of 10 siblings, and I was an only child. And so just to see that dynamic of her life, I would like to change and find out about that. Back to you, Mrs. Table Topics Master.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very interesting. Steve, what would you do on Mars for fun?
Nothing. I don't know why people are so excited about wanting to go to space. What do you do up there? You get in this contraption, they strap you down, and they shoot you into the atmosphere. And then you go weightless in dead silence and you look around. There's another thing you get to do. But if you could get out, rock climbing would be kind of cool because you never have to worry about falling. Bungee jumping and rope swings, which I have a lot of experience with, would be way more fun up there because you wouldn't hit the ground. It could be interesting, but for the most part, I like having gravity and the experiences that I enjoy here on this earth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Where would you go if you were invisible?
Thank you for that question. Table topics master, where would I go if I were invisible? That's an exciting question. I could go anywhere I wanted if I were invisible and no one would know I was there. I could sneak onto a plane and exact vengeance for someone who has slighted me in some way. So this weekend, my husband slighted me just a little bit, and he's in Mexico right now. So I could sneak on a plane and I could get even. So most of you know that I had quite a trip planned this weekend. I was going to Randall, Washington to pick up a giant box truck full of supplies and take it to the cold water aid station. I did do that, but the real adventure was on the way there. I had a U-Haul trailer behind our truck, pulled out just fine. We decided to go the Vantage route. What temperature was it that day? 105. We get to the Vantage Hill. Ding, 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 ding. That's never a sound you want to hear when you're driving a truck, especially when it's 105. Pull into the truck stop, and the oil pressure gauge is doing this. Ding, 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 ding. Low pressure. Pull into the truck stop, check the oil. There's like no oil in it. So at my house, I don't usually check that kind of stuff because I rely on my husband to do that. Some nice bystanders put enough oil in my truck to get me to Ellensburg, where I had a complete oil change and trip check. That took us 2 hours. We pull out of Ellensburg, we get to Randall. It only dinged once, so the oil pressure gauge sensor must have been a little bit off. I'm going to go a little bit over time because you need to hear the mic drop part of this whole experience. We get to Randall, we decide that the trailer that I'm pulling is too small to hold all of the supplies. So they swap it out with this giant box truck, load it all up. Go ahead and move your truck to the gravel parking area where it's out of the way. That's fine, except it won't start. So we leave it there for 2 days while I am out of cell phone coverage, hoping for the best that maybe it'll start when we get back. So we go to this beautiful place, Cold Water Lake. And I forget all about this truck that's waiting for me. We journey back to Randall to pick up the truck. I go out, it starts. And my instructions were, do not turn it off, just drive straight home. Don't turn that truck off. So I said, fine. I had to stop a couple of times. Somebody steals it, I'm okay with that. Unfortunately, no one did, so I still have that truck. I come home and I report to my husband. I said, you know, I just really babied it. I backed off on the RPMs because anytime I stepped on it, that gauge would start doing this. And he goes, are you ready for this? This is the mic drop part. I'll give it to you holus bolus. Well, you know, that oil gauge has never worked since we bought that truck. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Mary, if you could get a yacht, what would you call it and where would you sail it?
Do you want a time?
Can you unmute?
I don't know if she heard.
Who's the question for?
Oh, it was for you. Did you not hear me?
It's,
Oh, okay. I'll ask you again.
sorry.
If you could get a yacht, what would you call it and where would you sail it?
Okay, I'll time myself.
Okay.
If I had a yacht, I would call it the holus bolus. I think that's a great term. I thought about herky jerky. I don't think that's a good term for a sailboat. I thought about hocus pocus. No, that's a little scary. I might be superstitious, but holus bolus, all at once. Let's go. Let's get on that boat. Let's go somewhere all at once. Let's have a big party and just forget about who we are. Let's forget about the news. No internet on my boat, because we're just going to be isolated. We're going to get away from it all and have a true vacation. I think we've earned it in this past year and a half. Doesn't that sound just great? You're out in the ocean, the air's clear, it's kind of salty, and I've heard from my husband who was in the Navy that the air is different when you're in the open ocean. It's invigorating and it just smells good. So all at once, we're all going to get on that boat, the holus bolus, and just head for nowhere. And we'll stop when we have land, because in my imaginary world, we're going to have boats that come and give us food, unlimited food. Let's go.
Thank you very much. Fabiola, what is your lifelong dream?
My lifelong dream
Yes.
is to travel around the world. I would like to be able to visit all the different continents in the world and experience different cultures, the food, the architectural designs, the history. For me, I've traveled to only within, I've been to Canada, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Australia, but I would love to go, on my bucket list is Egypt and the Great Wall are two definite places that I would like to go. But again, I would like to experience and be able to go around the world. My mom is actually looking at taking a trip, a 6-month trip around the world on a cruise. And I am supporting that because I want her to be able to have that experience. And then she can come and share that with me. And then someday, hopefully I can do something like that. So my dream would be to experience the world, experience food, culture, art, architecture, and history. So, thank you.
All right. Lloyd, what is the one thing you have always wanted to do?
Hey, Lloyd.
Yeah, have you ever wished for a cattle prod? Anyway. What is the one thing I've always wished I could do? Actually, I've always wished I could go to outer space, because unlike Rob, I think there would be a lot to do in outer space. I don't want to go on one of these tourist junkets like, what's his name, Branson, and who was the other guy who flew just the other few
Bezos.
Yeah, Bezos. Those are kind of meaningless, although sooner or later, I think it's a few months from now, somebody's going to the International Space Station with one of Bezos's crews for like several months, which would be pretty cool, I guess. Why would I like to go there? Well, I've always been kind of a science fiction junkie ever since I was a little kid. And, you know, the rocket ship to Mars made the backyard stuff never really appealed to me, but the real authentic type science fiction did, like the book The Martian, for example. If you ever saw that film, the book and the film are very similar to one another. But anyway, outer space is where I would go.
We have about 7 more minutes and I have more questions. Is there anybody who'd like to volunteer for another question? Because if I don't get a volunteer, I'm going to draft somebody. Okay, Rob. If you were stranded on a tropical island, what 2 things would you want to do?
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. Stranded on an island by myself. I would love to be stranded on an island with just my wife. If it was just my wife and I, we could have so much fun. There would be unlimited drinking. That would be a necessity there on the island. Water, coconut juice, maybe the occasional cocktail. As long as we had enough to eat and drink, and my wife and I were on this island, we had shelter, we could make shelter. That would be the ideal thing for me in my lifetime on a deserted island with my wife. Thank you.
Well, so we get a little jam back here. Mary, can you hear me? Mary, can you hear me? Okay. If you were running for office, what would your campaign slogan be?
If I was running for my office, my campaign slogan would just be vote for Mary. It's short, it's to the point. With only 3 words, they'll fit on a sign really well. But where I would stand out though is my signs would be designer signs. I would have fuchsia and aqua as my colors. And the background would be psychedelic. I'm thinking of my week that I spent at Burning Man out in the desert. I think that I would have an art car that I would just drive around town in with my Vote for Mary signs, kind of like Vote for Pedro signs all around it. And I bet I would win, because all my speeches would be Vote for Mary and why. And with my Toastmasters experience, I'm sure I would just give stunning campaign speeches. That with my art car and my psychedelic signs, I'd have it made. I don't know what office I'm running for, but whatever it is, I'd have a good time with it. Vote for Mary.
And last but not least, Eric, if you could trade lives with anyone for a day, who would it be and why?
They could Tim's out master. That's what I'm going to say this. I would be fascinated to change lives with my wife. How does she really think? How does she really process the world? What does she really think of me? What does she really think of our family? This would be totally fascinating. This could be wide open. Nothing else came to mind. I mean, I just thought that's kind of scary in itself. But I oftentimes wonder what she's thinking. She's very diplomatic. She never has a bad word to say. I'd like to see if she down deep there she has some bad thoughts. I mean, just for kids. It would be interesting. No, thank you for the green card.
That sets the stage for a perfect transition back to our Toastmaster, Christina Stepper, the one who Eric would like to be.
He has no idea. As I was sitting there thinking about a bucket list, the one thing top of my bucket list would be to get all of these fires out, polis polis. Yes, please. Tonight would be good, don't you think? You just need a massive rainstorm to come over and douse them all. At this point, we get to hear from our evaluation team. I'd like to turn the meeting over to our general evaluator, Vicki.
Thank you so much. Hopefully my internet will not kick me off for a third time. At this time, I would like to introduce our speech evaluator, Steve.
Thank you, Ms. General Evaluator. You are a polished speaker. You've been doing this for a bunch of years, and it's clearly your passion. You excel at it. Your skills are maybe learned, maybe innate. They come off well. You're a great communicator. In your speech tonight, I feel like you did work a little bit at providing us with an understanding, although you didn't have quite the 28 syllable words that were involved in your first speech. You did reference Vackers, which I don't remember exactly what the acronym stood for, outside of vaccine something. You shared it, and then you went into detail describing what it stood for and how it applied with your topic. In your speech, I feel like you excelled at humor, which I think this speech, if you worked at it, could be a major home run in the humor department. You could go to town on this one. Your description of acronyms, as I mentioned, reference of technical terms and sharing of statistics are great. You have that ability to retain those many little details and share them without the use of notes. It's clearly a polished skill that you possess. When I think about something that you might want to work on, it goes a little bit back to last week's speech with a little bit of a twist, I guess. I think in the past you may have heard this, maybe from me and even others, is that your reference to the inspiration for this speech could have been extended a little bit and set us up for the amusement that we were about to receive from your description of your interaction with the neighbor. When you said that your speech was inspired by the second shot running into your neighbor, it could have almost been like a Laurel and Hardy act reference that you could have plugged in to what was coming, which was his inane thoughts of this product or this vaccine having never been tested, which any common sense kind of a person would understand and realize that well, that didn't work well at all. And in addition, the reference to punctuation on your fun little facts and thoughts as you refuted the craziness that people have created. Wonderful. Was I? You did a great job of just sharing with us the amusement associated with refuting the crazy thoughts that people have come up with and sharing. I thought the one reference to the size of a needle, because I just recently heard this from somebody I know. I'm like, really, you think of that? That they're injecting little microchips into us so that they can track us. The lack of reality there should be ultimately obvious, but it isn't. I think I
fell apart a little bit here. It was a great speech. I thought it had a lot of positive qualities, and I think you truly brought it along from last week's speech. Ms. General Evaluator.
Thank you. And at this time, I would like to call on our timer, Mary, to give her report.
Thank you, Vicki. Lloyd, your speech was 7 minutes, 36 seconds. Table topics, I have quite a list here. Selena came in first, 3 minutes, 52 seconds. Rob came in second, 2 minutes, 36 seconds. Oh, for his first one. And you know what, folks? I'm just going to say everyone else was within the limits. And if you really want to know what your timing was, just ask me. But everyone was good on that. Speech evaluation should be 2 to 3 minutes. Steve, you're at 4 minutes, 50 seconds. That's my report. Vicki, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mary. And now I would like to call upon our grammarian odd counter, Eric.
Thank you, Ms. General Evaluator. First of all, the odd counting. Vicki, you had 4 ums and 1 you know. Barbara, you had 5 ums. Pat, you just had 1 so. You had a big long roll and you only had 1 so. Lloyd, you had 4 ums, 2 ands, 4 wells, a so, a but, a like, you know, anyhow, and now, anyway. You had table topics and an evaluation, and you were clean. I didn't make anything up. And you also juggled a bunch of text snafus and made a joke, and holy cow, I'm impressed. Rob, you had 1 and 1 so, very good, because you had quite a bit of speaking. Christina, you were clean. I had a I me. Mary, you had an and a so, and that was it. Good job. Selena, you had 2 ands, 5, 6 so's, and a but. You got a little excited with your confession there. Fabiola, you had several ums. What's interesting is that this is tape, so if you think I got it wrong, watch back the tape. As far as use of the word, Christina used it twice. Rob used it once. Selena snuck it in. Mary, I was going to give you a half of 1 for naming your boat that, but then you had such an embellishment. I gave you 2 for that, and you said it again. You got 3. You're the winner tonight. I didn't hear any egregious grammatical errors. I had a couple of words that I liked. Lloyd used truthy. Selena said, "Here comes the mic drop part," which was very descriptive. I'm glad we could be here for you tonight to get that off your chest. That was. I will now give it back over to Vicki.
That's all right. Thank you very much. As a hybrid club, we are getting things together. We just are trying new things. We had some feedback at the beginning that was worked out. I'm looking forward to when the owl is ready to work to see how that helps with sound. On my end as a Zoom participant, unless the person at the podium in the live room is speaking directly to the mic, I can hear it well, but if they move their head to look at somebody else, then the sound doesn't come through. So it's just one of those things that we will keep working on. We're not the only club that is dealing with this. I've spoken with several other clubs in the district that are doing hybrid meetings now, and it seems that we're having universal problems as far as how to work out the bugs, but we will get them done. We had all components of a Toastmasters meeting tonight, formal speech as well as great table topics. And Pat, I like that you noticed the time and said, I'm just going to fill it all up. So I'm going to go back over and ask more people questions. And I really appreciated that. And our evaluation team was spot on. Back over to our Toastmaster, Christina.
Thank you. Has everyone had an opportunity to vote for speaker of the evening? Those, can they do it by chat?
Yes, they may.
I don't think anything was sent through chat.
Yeah, that's true.
Want to whisper it into the or you could write it and hold it up. That'd be secret too. Anybody on the remote want to vote? No, I'm getting head shake.
I don't want to vote because I couldn't hear it all well enough to evaluate.
Oh, okay. Our winner tonight is Lloyd Smith. Yay. Vicki, could you hold up the trophy for him? Yay! All right, I would like to turn the meeting back over to our president.
What a great and fun meeting tonight. And I'm going to pass it to our Vice President of Education, Buster, for any announcement.
Let's see if we have any. Well, I do want to make a couple of comments. I always think about the table topics speech that I give on any given week, and I realize who would represent me or who that actor would be to epitomize my life. He's world renowned. He's an incredible architect. He can build unbelievable tunnels. It would be El Chapo. You know, the other thing I wanted to mention, I hope that one day that we can all meet in person. I know that there's still some issues with that. I think it's important. I think it helps us as far as our speeches go. But what's really important to me is that oftentimes those on Zoom can't always hear what we're saying or vice versa. At one point tonight, Vicki said, I hope my internet doesn't kick me out. What I heard was my hairnet's too tight. So these things we could avoid if we were all here in person. And hopefully we can overcome that when we can all meet in person. Anyone, I don't have anything. I don't have anything to add for the meeting as far as educational notes. However, if anyone has anything for the good of the order, now would be the time to share that information. Vicki, I know that you mentioned that you had something going on tonight.
Yeah, let me go ahead.
Vicki, and I'll turn it back over to our president, Barbara.
Thank you again for this fun and interesting meeting. I do have to say, Christina, that New Zealand is on my bucket list. This is our kick-ass prime minister. So I'm not supposed to say this.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. All right, I am calling the meeting at an end right on time, 6:30. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.